the meeting. Thanks, Steve.
All right, thank you everyone for joining. As Samina mentioned, we've got 2 weeks worth of minutes to approve today. So this is the minutes from the 16th of May. So the attendees, again, this is taken directly from the Google Doc and automatically converted to Markdown. Is there any objections with the minutes as they are today? I hear none. How about the meeting minutes for last week? I was not in attendance last week, but we had a decent turnout. So this is good. Any objection to the
Don't take
minutes?
it personally, Steve.
You got a lot done because I wasn't there, right?
Get work done.
Yeah, they said all these bad things about you, but they weren't recorded, Steve. Sorry.
Oh, I heard all of them.
I actually commented that people are more open today than usual, so you must be the intimidating figure.
Oh, that's unfortunate. I have to change that.
It's the authoritative figure.
Maybe that's it. Oh, okay. Well, Matt, when we get to formulation, guess who's going to be presenting it?
I already accepted that potential burden already.
I kind of figured as much. All right. Which I think we're getting close to, actually, by the way, right?
We are at actually.
Okay. Yeah. All right. So any objection to the approval of last week's minutes?
No, not at all. But there are a lot of to-dos here. How do we handle them? Things we didn't resolve in the meeting. Okay.
Yeah, Jan captured all the to-dos in combination of Slack and the Google Doc. I've been going through the Slack canvas, crossing things off. For example, I noticed in some of the comments for last week's meeting was around signatures, right? But in a prior meeting, we actually decided to remove that part of the specification because it's not actually part of CycloneDX, right? It is its own specification. So what you'll see today, for example, is anytime that there's a signature, we have a very specific block of text, and it references both JSON signature format as well as XML signature.
Okay, cool.
So I've been working through those issues. There's still a lot more to work through. But if I miss anything, please correct me, right? Please let me know if you see anything obvious wrong that's incorrect with the document that has not yet been captured in the canvas. Okay, let me know, or add it to the canvas. So with that, let's go back to today's agenda. Any new folks on the call today? I don't see any. Good to see you, Chris. We have TC39 royalty with us. Is Dan here too? Oh, that Dan's not.
Oh,
yeah, he is.
I wouldn't go that far.
All right. I have one minor announcement, and then if anyone else has announcements, feel free to speak up. I've been invited by Josh Breshers, chair of the OSSF SBOM Everywhere working group. I'll be presenting some of the work that we're doing within TC54 during next week's meeting. I think it's next week, June 4th is their next meeting, I believe. So I'll be reviewing a lot of the work that we're doing in TC54, specifically around CycloneDX, the Transparency Exchange API, which is now TG1, as well as our initial efforts to get TG2 off the ground to standardize package URL. So so hopefully this will be a good opportunity for us to get more folks kind of into the fold especially with, I think we're going to need a lot of assistance with TG2, especially around, the ongoing maintenance of Perl types, and TG1, the Transparency Exchange API. I think there's a lot of vested interest in OSSF as well as OSSF member organizations to participate in that effort. So hopefully I can recruit some folks to come over and kind of join our discussion. So that's happening over here. Does anyone have any other announcements?
Steve, just Samina, it would be great if we can have support to work on the minutes as we do this meeting, as typically everybody does. Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah, thank you. And with that, I'm going to actually just, because we don't have, I don't know if anybody's been updating the document yet.
Quick question about, or just commenting on meetings. Is anybody else going to be at OWASP AppSec in Lisbon at the end of June? Because maybe we could have like a little in-person get together if people happen to be there.
Awesome. At least the 2 conference days, I'm going to be there.
Yeah, I'll be there the second conference day and the day after.
Nice. That's
I will
Saturday,
not,
yeah.
unfortunately. My daughter has a thing that week, but I'll be there in spirit.
Yeah, if you pay the food, Daniel and I can eat. That's a good spirit.
I'll buy you a beer.
Looking,
How about that?
Looking forward to meeting you.
It's
okay.
Lisbon. You buy me a glass of wine, Steve.
Oh, yes, of course.
Yeah.
Okay.
Anyway, so we're gonna be, both Daniel and I, in Lisbon at AppSec. I also try to get a presentation slot in the OpenSSF Day Europe in September for TG1, the API. So I submitted a proposal for that. As Steve said, it's important that we get the industry buy-in for the API. So.
Any other announcements?
Could someone link to the notes so that we could, help with the notes as Samina asked?
I think they're in the TC54 private channel. There's a link
right,
at the top.
okay.
Yep.
So with that, let's see.
Philip.
What's that?
I was a joke. It's not Lisbon, it's Lisbon. Bill of material.
Got it. So you said, Matt, we're at formulation right now?
Yeah, I think I made a comment to that effect.
Did you want to go ahead and lead us through this? Did you want to take the screen, or did you want me to? It doesn't really matter to me.
You operate the screen.
Okay.
So I'll just set up. So formulation was a big thing that was introduced in 1.5. Again, as I said last week, you can blame me for its contents. But effectively, this is what I've been looking for CycloneDX to have as a whole to represent the CI/CD, the complete CI/CD processes that I've been trying to get IBM as a whole to adopt towards, if you're familiar with OpenSSF and their SALSA level 3 compliance. I call it, this is called 3+ actually. And what Steve often carefully makes sure everyone understands is for repeatable builds. So my goal was to allow people building software or hardware, for that matter, or anything, to be able to capture the end-to-end process so that if they looked at the SBOM, they would have a roadmap to repeat those processes and recreate them someplace else. That's the goal formulation. And I pointed out that it's designed in such a way, it's, anybody familiar with workflows, it's just it's a workflow abstraction. But it's conscious of the fact that we're using, tooling, and it's an event-driven type of system, and that there are interactions with with components and services and other things externally. So we try to make and take advantage of all the things that we've talked about over the past many weeks, that we use, BOM refs so we don't duplicate information that already exists elsewhere. We use existing component tools and service, references and definitions. But so I'll get into more details specifically when we hit those sections, but I just wanted to give people an overview what my objective was and go from there. So the most like vulnerabilities, the whole thing is basically separated from the bill of materials. So you can create MBOMs at a top level, and you can create them independent of other things if you want as well. So again, any type of formula, this is where you create your, go to the table above. Let's go through the table values and maybe I can talk to them, and as we hit the individual ones, we can go more detailed. But again, so we want to be able to, if we create a formula, we want to be able to reference it multiple times potentially. So it's repeatable, maybe. And then we have so we can actually have a analog to the top level bill of materials where you have components and services. But what you want to do is you want to put your components and services that are used only as part of your workflow and nowhere else. They're not part of actually the dependency graph of the actual thing you're building, but components and services that contribute to the workflow or are part of the workflow. That's the concept. Then any formula can be comprised of multiple workflows. So the example I immediately grasp in my brain is that when we build software in IBM, and this is a constant topic on a weekly basis for me, is that when you build software, we actually have even a simple piece of software, we potentially are building it for different architectures, different operating systems. We're running it through different pipelines that are running in parallel. Some are serialized, some are not. So anything that contributes to that. So my sentinel use case is we have a product in IBM that has 400 build steps and that are run in 3 major groups cascading that leads to a release. And that each of these cascading things are composed of workflows that run in series and parallel that eventually kick out a final IBM software product for, a dozen countries and languages and architectures and whatever, right? So that's what I want to be able to capture. That was my target. Again, then I love properties. So if this is the place where you want to add your own stuff to describe your formula and some of these things that I can't capture through graphs and through the things the artifacts here. You can describe them here. So you can reference, you create properties that are meaningful to your environment, meaningful to your systems, etc. Add your own add your particular identifiers, names, tags, whatever you want to do. You can use properties. So that's the concept here. I'll stop and ask if there's generally any questions. Then we can go through each, then hopefully I explain it well enough so I can just touch upon each one as we scroll down. All right. So BOM ref 16111. We talked about why I had that 61.2. So again, components, what components, software and hardware components play a role in any workflow that you want to describe as part of the formula. Again, we have repeated structures. This is the same component structure, identical, and as well as services below. Same services that are identified for a space software component in a software bill of materials or a hardware bill of materials, right? Whereas we're using them here, but again, they're separated out, isolated out, because these are things that are only used as part of a formula or one of the workflows in a formula, right? Keep scrolling, Steve. Services, again, service, same definition. So workflow is what's new, and we can get to the definitions that comprise workflows. Again, I describe why we need multiple workflows as part of a formula. So individual workflow, what does it look like? Scroll down, please. So this is interesting. So one thing I will say, and you might see this or you may not, depending on how awake you are right now. But so the unit I'm trying to describe always is a task. So a workflow to me is a specialized task with extra things, but you'll see everything I describe in a workflow. You'll see perhaps repeated in tasks. So I'll prepare you for that now. Okay. So again, workflows has a workflow has a bomb ref. So if you want to reference it repeatedly, maybe you apply the same workflow multiple times, multiple places. You can give it your own identifier where you want your own UID here. And this is basically describes the instance. So if we actually, for example, if we actually run a pipeline, we want to have an identifier for it. We want to identify that instance of a particular build that correspond to a piece of software. We're describing the software bill of materials. We have a unique identifier, a place to put it, basically. And again, the good old name and description, we can give it a common name and description for human readability. And then we have something called resource references. So this is a new construct I created. So this is a way for us to encourage people to basically reference components and services that are part of the main bill of materials. So we can actually describe things. We can actually say, here are pointers to things that we're building that we describe in the larger bill of materials that we're basically connecting into this workflow. We don't want to redefine them here, but we basically wanted to describe these. And there are potentially also other resources that we want to introduce into the workflow. We can get the details when we show the actual resource reference structure below. Again, workflows are comprised of tasks. So we can describe the tasks that comprise the workflow. And again, it's like a dependency graph, a task dependency graph. So we can show how tasks are run in sequence, series, parallel. And we can actually show that we can show, when we look at those structures, some of the conditions that may exist for entry and exit into those tasks. Then we have a concept of task types, which is going to be an enumerated set again, which we can throw tomatoes at, as we've done to every other enumerated set during this code review. But mainly we want to capture typical CI/CD manufacturing type of tasks, general descriptors that we expect to see. So we basically can zoom in on a workflow and we can look for specific tasks by name. Trigger, this goes to an eventing model. I took a lot of time to explain this elsewhere, and maybe we could at a future session outside this topic, I can provide visuals. But basically, this is any type of an inventing model has an event trigger action type of sequence. There's an event, which is the raw event. The trigger is basically the how the event gets morphed into a set of parameters and a set of things that trigger some action or a function or a service or something to happen. So this is a model that I weighed in on the formulation work group heavily and instructed on. So maybe I'll have to look to dig up some of those documents and provide them here at some point if people want to talk about it. So anybody familiar with tasks? Tasks usually are comprised of steps. So this is where if you want to get down to the nitty-gritty and describe every single step that a task goes through. Anybody familiar with Jenkins or Travis or Tecton or anything like that? Any granularity that you want to represent down to a Unix instruction or a Linux instruction, whatever, you can represent in a step. You can show exactly as far as you want to go towards repeatability in these things. Inputs and outputs, again, every workflow has sets of inputs and outputs. These are reference resource and data that we bring into the workflow, that we bring to bear in the workflow that are needed to perform. That basically it's a superset of all the inputs and outputs that are needed for all tasks in a workflow. And then those tasks, eventually those input outputs you'll see being doled out to the tasks only where they're needed to the tasks, inputs and outputs. Again, we want to basically record important information around the workflows, especially, this is again, we're trying to represent an instance model here. an instance model of a workflow that was used to create a piece of software, hardware, etc. So we want to basically tell people, if you're shooting for a repeatable build, we want to tell you how much time when it started and when it ended. So those timestamps should correspond to publication timestamps when the final software artifact, they should line up. So we can actually line up all the tasks that were run. If you created a timeline, the overall timeline for the workflow should encapsulate all the task time starts and ends, and the time start and ends of the end time, especially of a workflow that says I was what was used to build a software product and push it to an Artifactory or package repositories, should correspond to like whatever timestamps were recorded in an attestation record, assigned thing in SigStore or something that said I submitted this. It should correspond, right? Then you have things called workspaces. So these are things that are shared file systems and data, etc., that are often attached. These are common concepts to workflows. So things, so you can describe data and things that are shared, like scratch pads, that their lifespan is tied to a workflow or a given workflow. And then the runtime topology. So this is kind of a way, and this is why I have some examples that I am way past. I'm approaching since end of last July, August timeframe. I have some blogs I wanted to write to show how this would work. But basically, you want to describe the platform that these workflows run on. So in my case, the most extreme example would be, you could describe your Jenkins pipeline or system and the virtual machines that it runs on. For Tekton, you could describe the container images and Kubernetes and whatever system you run your containers on, down to bare metal if you like to. And you can describe those components again as part of your workflows. You can fully describe, for repeatable builds, the entire set of hardware, software stack, images that you reference if you want to the nth degree. And again, properties sprinkled in to describe all the things that we may have not captured, that as you want to translate your description of your specific implementations onto CycloneDX, you have a way to do so through properties. So I'll stop there and ask if there are any questions about what I've said so far.
I have one question.
Sure, yeah.
I wondered, maybe, yep. Does the order of elements in the workflows array matter at all? Or doesn't it matter because we have start and stop times? I mean, even under the fact that we could have parallel workflows running, is there any need to bring them in order, or could I just shuffle them like I want to?
I'm not sure if I grasp the use case you have around the question.
The use
so-
case is usually in Python. We don't use ordered lists. We just use sets for everything. And when we did that
There-
for that particular part, we thought like, yeah, we have start and stop times. We don't need to implement it in an ordered way. We just
No.
have
Yeah, again, so the timestamps, they exist. If you use CycloneDX for one of the 6 CSS bombs for a design phase, you can describe, obviously you can describe it without timestamps. They're not required fields, right? So you would describe just your workflows and task, as a design. For an instance model, if I actually create a piece of software, I run them through, I'm just recording the actual times, the stop times that actually happen for those workflows. So there's no ordering implied. I'm just saying that if you want to use them to say if things make sense, you have something to audit here. You have timestamps that you can use to audit to make sure they make sense, right? So if you describe a workflow that's comprised that starts and stops tasks, logically, I was just trying to say that there's no requirements for anything written in the specification to say that they need to line up, but they probably should, because their dependency graph should say that they're they're described as, by definition, being part of the workflow. And they're described by the dependency graph as being children of the workflow. So, and the dependency graph typically describes how they are invoked in a graph format. So obviously there's some type of timeline that I described that they should all logically align to. So I'm not sure how that applies to Python and
Yeah, but my question is more regarding the spec, not the actual Python implementation. I don't care about that. We can fix that since I messed it up probably. But I want to know,
Your question
is
is
there
more about because you
anything
use set, because set does not guarantee the order of elements in the array, correct?
exactly?
Where did
We
where
did
set
that
is-
because we didn't find anything in the spec telling us that the order of elements mattered. I mean, it doesn't for components, it doesn't for services. Why would it matter for that one? This was our assumption, but maybe we were wrong, or maybe we
I'm
just
missing
overlooked it.
which field are we talking about that says set? I'm sorry.
Set is an unordered array in Python. It's an implementation.
Where's the term set used?
What do you
Well,
mean?
it's not. I think the question is like set, for example, in Java, Python, etc., is one way that you can implement an array. So we have arrays in our spec. I think the question is, well, is ordering of the arrays important?
No, it's none of this is important, right? So
Right.
much like the rest of the spec is designed in the same way. I mean, components and services are analog, and you have a dependency graphs basically. So any interpretation of it's it's straightforward. These are JSON arrays in the JSON schema. They're arrays. So any binding, you make whatever decisions you want to make in any binding, implementation binding, but the descriptions, not any different anywhere else in the spec in terms of, any dependencies are explicitly defined in dependency graphs.
Okay, so to repeat what or tell my own words what I just learned is there's nothing, no paragraph in the spec that tells that the order of elements in the workflow
No,
array
nothing.
matters, and this is by choice and
Yeah,
totally
the
true.
time start, the only thing that can
Okay.
imply that would be time start and time end, and those are optional, and those are more of metadata. Those are actual metadata that you capture typically on a
Understood.
building. Yeah. I probably spent too much time describing them. Yeah, there's nothing in the spec that of any requirements around that these things should line up or be sequenced in a given way. In fact, the entire premise of workflows is things can be run in parallel, but based upon a set of inputs and outputs and triggers have to happen for things to conditions have to be met on triggers for things to start properly, right?
Right.
Yeah. Cool.
I checked the JSON schema. I don't know if that's relevant, but they say that arrays are used for ordered elements. In Python, array is analogous to the list of tuple type.
I don't know.
I added a link in
Does that require a response, Hala? I mean,
No, the question was whether an array is ordered or not, right? But in the JSON schema, they claim that arrays are ordered.
well, there's a problem with that. Arrays are ordered. The problem is every implementation of JSON doesn't respect order. That's the problem.
Okay.
So I have a problem with that. I mean, as an aside, I talk about this all the time with JSON patch. So my SBOM utility implemented JSON patch. So JSON patch is great. JSON patch is great as long as you assume arrays start at 0 and end in 10, and then that they never change. But that's not true. The reality is, if you generate one SBOM at one point in time and another point in time, every implementation, the order is skewed. There's no that you can't preserve. The generation of two SBOMs is separated by time distance, and they don't have knowledge of the previous ordering. So even if I have the identical build with repeatable builds, this is why Steve talks about repeatability, the SBOMs are going to may look entirely different in the ordering of the arrays. So that's a JSON schema statement. That's not a practical statement by any way, shape, or form.
Okay. Daniel has a hand up since a long time.
Yeah, I've been wondering to kind of channel Ashley, who's not here today. How widely is this connected to build tools to actually be able to generate this formulation? I'm kind of wondering specifically about the JavaScript area where it seems like a lot of tools would have to know about this in order to be able to remember the information, because a lot of things dispatch to different kinds of substeps,
Yeah,
the way the JavaScript builds are set up.
I'll just say I'm extremely confident, and I took people through this exercise and a similar question through weeks at the formulation work group that went into this. Anybody who has a rudimentary concept of a CI/CD process, starting with a make file with make targets, where they have make build, make test, make whatever, or phony targets or whatever, they've created some, rough, somebody's on speaker. Is that a question, or is that somebody just like, okay. So these are the blogs I wanted to write, and I started to some degree, but never finished. So you can map a simple make file. So if I'm starting with a local single package make file build, I could map my make file and the make targets as the make targets are each are a task. They have dependencies, they have components, they have steps within the instruction steps of a make target. I can copy the bash or command line things that would be executed, the make file tool would execute. I can put the make file tool in the tools, describe it as a component or a resource used as part of the workflow. I can do all these things, right?
Yeah, the schema makes perfect sense. What I don't understand is whether it's a manual step per package, or whether this is like something that
automation
CMake could.
Yeah, so
okay, good.
So again, the goal is automation. So if I were at, use Node.js, for example, like, so if I were a tool provider, a make provider from Microsoft, I could potentially build, generate an SBOM if I was the make tool, right? I could create an SBOM, CycloneDX SBOM, and as I was interpreting the make file itself as the make file tool, I could create a CycloneDX SBOM and create a formula, a workflow based upon the inputs I saw and the rules I executed. The inputs, the outputs of the rules I execute for the targets, right? And all those things. And I could do those things. I can get in the tool and implement this. And
go ahead.
Sorry. Oh, no. And at the other end of the spectrum, I wanted to mention, so my extreme example is my build system I described. We're using Tecton. And we haven't done this. It's a hard thing to do. We have all the pieces put together in a warehouse. We just don't have the assembly line, the manufacturing assembly line to put this into a CycloneDX bill of materials yet. We're getting there incrementally. But I can describe a full-blown Kubernetes-based Tecton container-based system with full-blown Tecton pipelines, Tecton tasks, Tecton triggers, Tecton workspaces. And I've also done the exercise because I've done this personally. I've migrated Jenkins and Travis pipelines. I've migrated Travis to Jenkins and Jenkins to Tecton personally for Apache projects. And those things can be mapped easily to. So anybody who owns if I own Jenkins or I own whatever CI/CD tool, much like a makefile at the low end, at the high end, any of these CI/CD tools could implement this and kick out a CycloneDX SBOM using these data structures. Right.
One of the design choices that we have in CycloneDX is I think we intentionally sacrifice having a perfect object model, right? The goal is not to have a perfect object model. The goal really is, well, one of the primary goals is to have a highly automatable object model. And what you end up with is something very, very different than having the perfect object model, whatever that looks like. A lot of the elements in formulation are self-contained, meaning that if you have a single step in your build process and you need to be able to record what that tool or process did, it would be very easy to write a very simple script to actually do that, right? Because again, you don't really have to understand the entirety of the spec because it's not this perfect object model. It's designed to be highly automatable and create very, very simple scripts and tools around processes. I think there might be opportunity. You mentioned, JavaScript community. There might be opportunity for the JavaScript community to kind of reach out to the Eclipse Foundation, specifically the Termium project. That is, that's OpenJDK, right? That's Java, because they are also implementing formulation support for OpenJDK. So a future version of OpenJDK will in fact have all this information. That's kind of the plan. So it might be an opportunity for both camps to kind of collaborate on lessons learned and that sort of thing.
Yeah, I want to build on what Steve said. So Steve, I love that messaging, and I've embraced that messaging, and that's what drew me to Cyclone, because it wasn't so opinionated where I had to force my square peg into a round hole. I mean, it gave me the latitude, but it gave me the structure, so I knew where to put my data, how to associate it and relate it to each other. It gave me a means to logically separate sets of information that belong together, like formulation or vulnerabilities. I can separate it out if I need to. Because one thing, much like vulnerabilities, there's a strong acknowledgement that vulnerabilities and VEX bombs, VDR bombs, have a different life cycle than the actual bill of materials for the component that the vulnerabilities affect. And same thing for manufacturing. You have to realize that a software bill of materials for a component is probably being created in pipeline. So, in a CI/CD process, where I'm building my software, where I'm marshaling all the software, that's where I'm building my bills of materials. I can describe the dependency graph, all the dependencies and some of the tools that were used. But if I want to capture the whole end-to-end CI/CD process, that's being captured by a different tool set. It's being captured by Make at a low end, or Jenkins or Travis or whatever at a high end. So different tools have a different view on the system. And so it's great to make sure that the data is separable, but could be referential to each other. So that's a key thing here. So if I want to create a manufacturing bomb and in-bomb and link it, do a bomb link to the S-bomb that is produced in pipeline, I can do so. And I can then have a VDR bomb point to the S-bomb, and they can all, be related to each other because they are, but they have different life cycles, and they bring in different information or different views, potentially to different audiences that are important to different audiences, right?
So we've gone through
one thing. If we're having this upcoming meeting with the OSSF, they're heavily promoting Salsa with their kind of simple model of describing formulation as a bunch of GitHub URLs. And this is being, I guess, directly referenced by some recent CISA documents. This particular strategy has had some skepticism expressed from within the JavaScript community, and is seeing somewhat low adoption. And this seems like it would be a much more rich thing that's kind of trying to model something similar. So I wonder if we could collaborate with them on this, in particular in their like repository, software repositories best practices working group. I can't remember what that's called.
Yeah, if somebody wants to reach out to them, that would be great.
Always open to collaboration, but I've kind of, like I said, I've been pushed towards the AI space. So I basically attend almost no OpenSSF meetings anymore, but I keep touch. I manage a call where I provide status and get status on different SBOM and other security related things. every 2 weeks. If there's, I think in my estimate, you need a receptive audience. And I think that you need, I think like what Steve is pointing out, if we have 1 or 2 people who can create a reference implementation somewhere to showcase this, I think that's where my time's best spent personally, I'll just say. If I know somebody, instead of a broadcast approach, which I found hasn't worked great for me at OpenSSF. I'd rather work with a set of developers saying like, this is what I saw. The secure supply chain repo work group is great because we had people coming from GitHub and from Ruby Gems and from NPM and Node.js and people there who own the clients. And that's why SigStore took off, is because people would talk about how do I implement SigStore in my client? And then once 1 or 2 did it, then it took off. Then suddenly more package managers came, and then suddenly SigStore had 2 dozen implementations, right? We just need that one reference implementation to showcase it practically to get it to take off.
And I think there's, to kind of build up on that, I think, additional tools need to be created. While Matt was describing formulation from a how do I build software perspective, that's really not what formulation is specifically designed for. Yes, it can be described to this, it can be used to describe how software was built, but it can also be used for other things. For example, how did I train, evaluate, and deploy a service or a model, a machine learning model, right? We're going to get into, we talked a little bit about cryptography and things like FIPS 140-2 and 3, right? Well, for example, how did I certify my particular cryptographic algorithm implementation, right? These are all things that can be described in formulation. So it goes well beyond simple like build profiles.
I've tried to tease that. I put the jab in. Formulation can be used for that, right, Steve? I do that all the time. I'll say it can be used for AI. Absolutely can be used for AI. So it can be described how you train a model, how you fine tune a model, and things that incorporate lots of manual human processes along with tooling and automation. And you can have, so a lot of things could be done with formulation. So that this is abstracted enough to be able to do those things.
So, I think we need to get a little bit back to the agenda and kind of go through this a little bit more, Matt. But I do want to maybe revisit maybe some of the messaging opportunities that the TC can do in the future to kind of promote some of the work that we're doing. So did you want to continue leading us through the spec? Did Matt drop off or?
No, sorry, I went back on mute. So we're back to the field. So I described each field in the table. Hopefully what I've said matches the descriptions you see here. So and we'll get to resource reference reference choice is what references is comprised of. I want to spend some time here. So again, it's about this notion of being able to marshal all the things that are part of your workflow in one place. So basically, this is a place to say, I want to, if I already have defined in the larger CycloneDX bill of materials resources that are referenced in the workflow, I want to bring them in, I want to put them here. But more importantly, there's so many things in a build process that come from the outside that might not be able to be represented as maybe their data artifacts, maybe their documents, maybe their websites, informational websites that play a role. So again, it makes reuse of the external reference, but it's basically saying, I want to marshal all the things that apply to any task in the workflow in this place. So that's the goal here. Okay, then tasks. We want to get to tasks is the next big structure. So again, at one point I modeled actually Jan can laugh at me, but the problem is that we ran into JSON schema and XML schema limitations. And we might be able to fix in 2.0 going forward. But workflows task is a common, you'll see a common set of elements. So again, a workflow is a specialized task. So you'll see a lot of things repeated in task. So it goes back to conceptually, this goes back to tecton concepts actually. So basically you can embed a pipeline or a workflow in another task. So a task can actually embody a workflow, mind you. So it's all very recursive in a very interesting way. So you'll see, that's why you see a lot of repeated fields. So again, it's a UID. So again, going back, I want to touch base on the commit thing. So that's the actual intent of a UID. So if you run a tecton pipeline or pipeline thing, if you have an instance of it, you actually have an identifier. And so again, if you want to start bringing in artifacts like reference GitHub events or GitHub triggers, you have a way to bring those ID or commit IDs that are part of an event. You can bring those into these things as well. We proved that out on paper, basically.
Question for you, Matt. I do recall the JSON schema limitations that we ran into.
Yeah.
And just wanted to clarify that a task is basically identical to a workflow, correct?
Yeah, there may be one or two esoteric differences or field differences.
Right. So in the human readable documentation that we're looking at, would it be safe then to say, when I come up to the task, when I come up to here, have a reference to say, well, a task is a special kind of workflow, refer to the workflow, refer to the definition in workflow, right?
Yeah, I mean,
Can I do that?
I mean, I think that the spec should reflect the current schema.
Okay, so you want it as is.
Yeah, I did go through when we separated it out. I changed like descriptions here and there to say workflow, task, so anyway.
Right. Okay. All right. So all these are repeated.
Yeah. Inputs, everything. So every task is input, output. They have workspaces that are dedicated workspaces for that task, etc.
Right. All right. External references, task types.
So, sorry, can you scroll up to resource reference, I think? External reference. I think you scroll by your resource.
Yeah.
If you scroll down, is there a type on that here? Because in the table it was undefined.
That's actually, I think that's one of the issues with the JSON schema.
The problem is with these references is we created a reference type boils down to a string. The problem is we define a string as a ref type, then we define a bomb link as a ref type. So the problem is that the spec generation stuff doesn't say, oh, it's a string.
Right.
That's a problem.
Yeah. So these are the task types. Is that what you wanted to see, LA?
No, I just want to check because I noticed earlier on, and I wrote a note in the our Google Doc that resource reference have an undefined type, and I just asked whether that was a bug or a feature.
I think that's a document generation issue.
That's something I need to correct. There's several occurrences of the word undefined in the human readable documentation that I still need to resolve.
Okay.
I think what the generation tool needs to say is that this maps to a ref type, and then you have to have a ref type appear, and the ref type will say I'm a string. That's what.
Yes.
Okay.
So again, this is where we took a lot of input from the work group. I created an initial set of enumerated types, and then we added to it. We threw darts at it and said, let's apply other processes. So we actually have obviously we have the other process, but we want to basically, this helps encourage people to give them an idea of what type of tasks are involved. Again, they're focused a lot on very inclusive of a software CI/CD process, but conceptually, we can add other things. Again, I want to, much like your comment, Ale, every time we have an enumeration, I want to move to a URN type. So we can actually create URNs for different types of, people can bring their own, tasks in from their own specific domain eventually, right?
I mean, there's a standardization philosophical discussion here, whether, like with Perl, now Philip Liv, the Perl types is a moving target, and some of this enumeration is a moving target. Could we then refer to another document from the ECMA standards? We don't have to update the ECMA standard.
That's the hard part. So, one thing that should be apparent to everybody is that most people come to bills and materials because of software, right? And sometimes to a small degree hardware. But, I've been trying to talk about X bombs or just bombs or X bombs to reinforce the fact that there are many types of bombs.
Yep.
And so I don't know if you can ever capture everybody's domain. I just got off an AI meeting where we're trying to figure out how people contribute their knowledge to like a Wikipedia for an AI model. The problem is I convinced people and everyone agreed is that we can't restrict people and give people a square hole and say everyone must fit into our concept of what your domain is. That's why URNs and URIs are great. You bring your own view, your own semantics, your own view of how things are related to each other. And that's what we have to embrace. Now we can have opinionated things or have suggestions, but they always have to be extensible. For certain domains, we could go down that path.
Oh, yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I mean, the question here is, do we have, I'm not saying that this exact enumeration, but if we come up with an enumeration that we know will have to change faster than we want to publish new standards within ECMA, is there a way to reference to another document that we have another process of handling, a faster process like in GitHub or something?
Yeah,
I don't know.
I think that, again, as you pointed out, I think that wherever we have a enumeration, where we have a type, that same question has to be raised. So
I think ideally, right? Because again, focusing on things being highly automatable is one of the number one design choices that we have. So having an enum is actually really, really good for automation. But it's, as Matt said, it's not going to capture everybody's use case. So you need a way to extend that. One of the things that we debated in the CBOM working group was because we have a lot of enumerations for cryptography as well, and we actually removed a few. But we debated having an external schema, very, very similar to how we do SPDX license IDs, that would be external to the CycloneDX specification, and that could evolve independently. And we didn't have any governance around that kind of process, right? Right now, we are very reactive when it comes to SPDX license IDs, right? The SPDX group, they publish a new authoritative list of license IDs, and then we automatically use those license IDs and build a new SPDX subschema. There isn't any governance or process that really needs to exist, right? Because the SPDX team does it all. However, if we were to externalize some of these enumerations that we have so that they could evolve over time independent of the specification, we will in fact need some kind of governance and process around that. And perhaps as a suggestion, that might be the work of possibly a third TG, right? To actually work on externalizing some of the enumerations so that when we get to like a version 2 and we're looking at not only being highly automatable, but highly extensible simultaneously, because these two concepts are sometimes incompatible, right? How can we meet both objectives simultaneously? That might be the work of a future TG.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
just want to add a
I
little
mean,
flavor.
what
So go ahead,
you
go ahead.
mean is creating our own IANA with things like expert review or write a document or something like that we have in
Yeah.
IANA tables.
Exactly. One of the things, for example, that we had to remove from the cryptography specification was the enumeration of elliptic curve names, right?
Mhm.
There isn't an authoritative list of what those curve names are. There is a list, and it is created from a university in Europe, but it's non-authoritative, right? It doesn't come from a standards body.
I think.
Yeah, I think
that's out of scope, but I think IANA
Well, no,
has one now.
But I think in general, CBOM is a great example because it's a evolving, developing thing that's trying to map their stuff to a bill of materials, right? And so the elliptic curve is a great example. So on a monthly basis, new elliptic curve algorithms are being submitted. Ones that were adopted or being looked at are candidates, and for FIPS are being rejected or being replaced by better ones. So whenever people try to evolve our map on a Cyclone, it's good to give them, to me, enumerations give me a guidepost. It's kind of like saying everyone is going to take a hike and we're all starting at this base camp. We all want to end up at the top of the mountain here. And I'm going to give you breadcrumbs. I'm going to give you landmarks to identify steps along the way, places you should hit or beach. For this hike, you should hit, you should follow a general, you can follow whatever trail or path you want specifically. And you could be able to add your own landmarks like Google Maps. But I'm going to give you some landmarks, some values that should align and give me an idea that you hit most of the steps along the way to reach the end final result, right?
So we are at time. So thank you, Matt, for leading us through this. We'll continue with the task types next week. Thank you for all the questions. Recording should be available hopefully later today, Samina.
Yep, absolutely.
Awesome. All right. Thank you, everyone. Have a great rest of your day.
You bye.
Same.